Welcome back to Proxima, everybody, and today we're going to be talking about what I think GW will reveal for the Craftworld Eldar in 10th edition. And so far, we haven't really heard that much about the Eldar. We've kind of gotten a few tips. We've gotten the Shuriken weapon profile, of course, from the Shuriken cannon. We've gotten the Falcon special rule that it's going to have the Shock Assault, special rule where it allows the unit inside to reroll wounds against targets hit by the Falcon, which is actually an ability shared by the Hecatan Land Fortress of the Votann. So we know now that that's not going to be unique to the Eldar, which might actually mean that the Falcon, believe it or not, might still keep Cloud Strike, but we'll see. And other than that, we haven't really gotten a whole lot of information except for, kind of comparisons of, different armies and different units and things like that we can draw from. So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to kind of look at those reveals that GW has made so far and make an educated guess about what I think will be revealed for the Craftworld Eldar or, something around it. So without further ado, let us go ahead and jump right into the video. And like always, we're just going to do a quick overview of the video before we jump right in. We're going to be looking at the faction ability that I think the Eldar are going to get. We are going to look at the detachment rule, the powerful weapon reveal, the unit datasheet, and the character datasheet that I think GW will reveal for the Craftworld Eldar. So all of these things kind of go in line with what we've seen so far. Every single faction revealed so far has basically revealed these 5 things. So I think it's more than safe to say that this is what they're going to reveal for every army, and this, of course, includes the Craftworld Eldar. So starting with their faction ability, I highly believe, looking at all of the armies that have been revealed so far, and all of their army abilities revolving around some type of dice manipulation, right? You look at every single army that's been revealed so far, it's some sort of dice manipulation, either way you look at it. And I think what we're going to get is Strands of Fate. So Sisters of Battle with their Miracle Dice, World Eaters with their, I don't even know what to call that, Rage Dice, I guess, where they can get bonuses. They roll 6 dice at the beginning of the game, or beginning of the turn, I should say. And I think that's going to be the same thing with the Craftworld Eldar with Strands of Fate. So I believe it's going to work like this. You roll 6 dice at the beginning of the command phase before taking Battle Shock tests, and each of which can be used to change your roll to an unmodified 6 until your next command phase. So very similar to how it works now, except for the fact that psychic tests are no longer going to be a thing. So instead of, the result of a 3 being a psychic test, it's now going to be a Battle Shock roll. Yes, I do in fact believe that Strands of Fate will be able to be used for Battle Shock, because of the fact that Battle Shock is now a 2d6 leadership test, and high leadership, rolling 6s and things like that, is something that is going to be desired for passing those tests. Which means that a roll of a 6 on a Battle Shock of a Strands of Fate would essentially auto-pass for your unit unless there was some sort of insane modifier or, negative modifier or something like that. And even then, it would greatly increase the chances of you actually passing that Battle Shock test. So I do think we're going to see that going forward as far as the faction ability goes. And I obviously think that in smaller battles, 0 to 1,000 points, which are now called Strike Force games, you're going to only be able to keep 3 of those dice, but in larger games, you're going to be able to keep all 6. So this kind of also goes in line with what we've seen so far in the faction reveals. So, before we were really only able to keep 4 dice, maybe 5 if we had a, relic from the Uthway, or Warlord trait from the Uthway, Fate Reader. But I think in 10th edition, you're going to be able to just keep all 6. I think they're going to basically just simplify it in this way, and you're going to be able to use more dice, which is a good advantage to have. The downside, obviously, is that psychic tests are going to be no more, and you're not going to be able to use Strands of Fate for these. And in general, I think psychic powers are going to be severely reduced. I think you're going to see things like Guide only really being able to target the unit that the Farseer is joined with, or maybe a unit within 6, very close to the Farseer, but not anything crazy like we had before, where it was like 18 or 24 inches out. And because we've really seen nothing like this so far, it leads me to believe that Eldar psychic powers are going to be the same. They're going to be based on the squad, and that's about it. I think maybe Doom might be, maybe a 12 or 18 inch range out from the Farseer. But again, I don't think it's going to have the insane range that it does now. And obviously, we're going to have a much reduced psychic list. So, Farseer, Skyrunners, and Farseers are probably going to have different powers. But I don't think we're going to get the versatility of psychic powers that we once had, sadly. But we'll have to wait and see. Who knows? But in my opinion, it wouldn't make much sense to keep things like Guide and Doom the same if Farseers are joining units and, the Librarian that's already been revealed and the, Psychers from the Tyranids that have been revealed have not gotten similar abilities that can buff units outside of their own, kind of unit and stuff like that. So unfortunately, I just don't think that's going to be the case. Now, as for our detachment rule, I believe it's going to be battle focus. Now, the reason I think this is because every single army has gotten one of these so far. And I think that battle focus is going to be more easily swapped out for another detachment ability depending on what detachment you get. So obviously the launch detachment is going to be the one that everybody's going to use in the index. And this is basically going to be your standard detachment special rule, right? And we've seen a lot of these revealed so far, and I think for the Eldar, it makes sense that it would be battle focus. Now, obviously, whenever our codex comes out or somewhere along the way, we might get additional abilities that we can swap out for battle focus, and I think this makes sense because GW wants to incentivize Eldar players with other detachments to be able to use different strategies besides just battle focus. Which is a lot of what the Eldar meta revolves around now is movement shenanigans and moving in and out and around terrain so that you basically can't be shot at or, you're more durable to enemy fire. Which is obviously a big part of how the Eldar have kind of always played, right? They hit hard, but they're very fragile, so you need to keep them safe. So they've always kind of been that. And I think GW really wants to keep this in a way, but also make the option available for other types of special rules for the Eldar. So that's why I don't think battle focus is going to be the faction ability. I think it's going to be the detachment ability, which can be switched out for others later down the road. Like, for example, later on, GW wanted to put out a release for Eldar or something like that, an update for the Eldar, and give armies new detachments. I think it's very likely that you would see different things besides battle focus. You'd see things like a Spirit Host detachment with maybe additional durability for Wraith units or something like that. Or maybe even something revolving around a Wind Rider detachment where you have jet bike bonuses and other things. So I think battle focus is just going to be the basic kind of detachment ability that you get to start, but you'll probably have to switch this out for other things later on if you want to run a different detachment. So basically how it's going to work is the same way as now. I think GW was pretty happy with how they did battle focus this time around. I think the problem that they saw in my mind was the fact that Fire and Fade was in combination with units like Swooping Hawks would be spammed to the point where no one could interact at all with the Eldar player. Fire and Fade can only be used on one unit. Battle focus is a D6, so it's not exactly a guarantee that your whole unit is going to be able to pop in and out of cover safely every single turn. It's not a guarantee. So, yeah, I think battle focus in general is a pretty balanced special rule as of now. And I think it will be in 10th edition too. Nothing much has changed. There's still going to be, terrain on the battlefield. There's still going to be line of sight and stuff like that. So I think it's going to exactly work the same. Each time a non-Wraith or vehicle unit shoots, immediately after resolving these attacks, the unit can move d6 inches in any direction. Models moving through terrain subtract 3 inches to their battle focus distance, which is the same as now, and I think that is actually a fair thing, believe it or not. Just because personally, if you didn't have this, there'd be situations where, Eldar units would basically not even care about moving through terrain. It'd be much easier for them, by the way, to just, move 1 inch into a piece of terrain, shoot an enemy unit, because obviously if you're in obscuring terrain, you can shoot out of it at other stuff, and then, use battle focus and guarantee that they could get behind it again. So there'd be a lot of, kind of cheapness in that, and I think GW is going to keep that penalty. Maybe units like Rangers and maybe units like Shroud Runners will be immune to this. Maybe they won't subtract the 3 inches, if they have a stratagem or a data card, ability or something like that, but I kind of highly doubt it, to be honest with you. And also, models cannot advance and battle focus in the same turn. So I think we're going to lose Swift Strikes, guys. I think that's going to be gone, to be honest with you, which is kind of sad. I love Swift Strikes, but it was a Craftworld trait, and I think basically everybody's losing those. But we might get it on some unit cards. So what I'm thinking is perhaps, and again, this is a big maybe, but I think perhaps, jet bike units might have something similar to this if they're joined by an Autarch maybe, or, Shroud Runners might have something similar to this maybe. But again, not confirmed and highly doubtful. This is one of my tinfoil hat theories about the future of Swift Strike-like maneuvers. So I do think that's going to be very good. I do think we're going to retain battle focus in some form, if not the exact same form that it is now. As for the powerful weapon reveal, what other weapon could they possibly reveal except for the Prism Cannon of the Fire Prism? Now, this is obviously, I think, guaranteed they do this, right? All the weapons they've revealed so far have been the heaviest weapons of the Codex, right? If you look at the Necrons, it was the Doomsday Arc. If you look at the Sisters of Battle, it was the Exorcist Battle Tank, right? They're going to reveal this. And basically what I think it's going to be is the Focus Shot. They're going to put emphasis on the fact that the Fire Prism is versatile and can deal with any different situation. Focus Shot is going to have attacks 2, probably strength 16. AP -4, it is going to lose an AP, and its damage is going to be something around D6 plus 3. Which is actually only 1 more damage than it is before. Now, Fire Prisms, though, I guarantee you are going to lose the linked fire ability. They're just going to lose it straight up. I don't think they're going to have it at all. It's not going to be a stratagem. It's not going to be on their data card. I think they're just going to straight up lose it. The reason for this is because GW probably wants to sell singles of these because it is a big investment to drop money on 2 of them. And I think GW is probably going to just make it a little more intuitive to use these. So you don't probably have to use them in groups of 2 anymore. Now, just looking at that profile, that's actually kind of worse than the profile now, considering the increase in toughness of vehicles, right? Mostly. You have things like Rhinos, you're now just going to be wounding on 3+. And you're going to wound most vehicles now on 3+ regardless. So I don't think the strength 16 is really going to be that big of a deal, to be honest. Up from 14, it's kind of one of those like nerfs, quote unquote. It's going to be able to wound everything on 3 basically, but that's about it. It's not going to be able to wound lighter stuff on 2+ like it can now. As for its damage, D6 plus 3, that's my best guess. I think obviously they're going to want to increase the damage a little bit to compensate for the decrease in, general ability to wound. But I also think it's going to come with a special ability, and that's Devastating Wounds. So every 6 you roll to wound is going to basically convert that damage D6 plus 3 into mortal wounds. Now, this has a kind of a cool synergy if it does, in fact, work like this, because I do think that the Fire Prism is going to get Devastating Wounds on its cannon, because the Doomsday Arc has that, right? So there's different weapons that we've seen so far that also have this ability that fulfill the same role, and I think we are going to see that in the Prism Cannon as well. And there's specific synergy with this with the Strands of Fate faction ability, which obviously can turn any wound roll into a 6 if you roll it. Now, I don't think there's going to be as many rerolls on Strands of Fate, so you probably can't guarantee this every turn, but it's pretty likely that you'll at least get 1 wound roll, and you could probably use this on your Fire Prism, which is honestly going to be really awesome. That means your D6 plus 3 is going to be converted to mortal wounds, so you still have a kind of a little bit of an ability to ignore armor and invul saves. Even though armor is probably not going to be that big of a deal, the invul saves are going to be what's going to be, helpful in that. As for the Disperse Shot, I really don't see it becoming that great. I see them changing it to a 2d6 instead of 3d3. I think this just makes it easier for players getting into it to know what they're rolling, right? Is 2d6. So attacks 2d6, it's essentially almost the same. It gives you a little bit more attacks than 3d3, but not by a lot. I think it's on average 1 attack higher. Strength 8, it's going to boost in strength because it's going to want to be able to target, heavy infantry, and most heavy infantry is also getting a pretty significant toughness boost. I mean, we've seen Votan go up to toughness 5. We've seen Terminators go up to toughness 5. There's going to be units out there that are toughness 6 from Nurgle, Terminators, Plague Marines, stuff like that from Nurgle are going to be toughness 6, obviously. So I don't think strength 8 from strength 6 is that big of a stretch, because I'm sure they still want this thing to be able to kill infantry too. AP -2. I think they're going to keep the AP exactly the same on this one. I don't think it was great before, and they're probably just going to leave it the same way. It's going to have damage 2, and it's going to have the blast keyword. So yeah, the disperse shot is probably not going to be that good, to be honest. It's probably going to be the same as it was before. Not really that great at killing infantry, but better at killing infantry than the focus shot. So when your opponent doesn't have a lot of vehicles left, you still have something to shoot at that's, relatively decent. But yeah, I think if this reveal ends up being close to what I'm saying here, I think it would be pretty good. And I think the Fire Prism, depending on how it costed, would be an excellent unit for taking out enemy battle tanks. I mean, hitting on a 3+, wounding on a 3+ with 2 attacks, and then, being able to basically use Strands dice to boost those either way. And by the way, you could also use it to boost the hit roll, obviously. That's pretty strong. And I easily think that at least 1 or 2 Fire Prisms, probably more like 1, would find its way into a lot of lists. As for the unit datasheet, what other unit could they possibly be talking about except for Guardian Defenders? So obviously they're going to talk about Guardians. I don't think they're going to really reveal Dire Avengers or anything like that. The reason being is because if we looked at all the past reveals, they've all just revealed the basic troop choice for their army. Primaris Intercessors, Chaos Space Marine Legionaries, Hearthkin Warriors, etc. So I don't think we're going to see anything crazy here. I think we're just going to basically see the unit datasheet of the Guardian Defenders. So I think their basic stats are going to remain the same. I think they're going to get Leadership 7+. They're still going to have a 4+ save, Toughness 3. They're going to have Objective Control 2, just like basically everything else. In most ways, Guardians are going to remain exactly the same as far as their stats go. The Shuriken Catapult is also going to remain the same. It's going to have AP -1, but they're going to switch the Shuriken ability out with Sustained Hits 1. I think we've already seen this with the Shuriken Cannon. No doubt they're going to have this for the Shuriken Catapult as well. As for the weapon platform, I don't think there's going to be any change to it except for the actual weapon profiles. I do think they're going to tweak those a little bit. I can kind of see the missile launcher increasing in strength with the Crack Missile, basically the Starshot missile for the Eldar, right? Starshot and, of course, the Plasma. As for the ability of the unit, I think this is going to be it. Now, this is a lot of, again, this is speculation. But I think the ability is going to be when controlling an objective, this unit's Sustained Hits 1 weapons become Sustained Hits 2. And this would make the unit very good at dealing damage when on an objective, which is kind of like the Guardians thing, right? And again, GW has them rerolling 1s to hit as of now, which isn't that great of an ability. So I think they're probably going to do something along this line that increases their sustained hits. Now, there's a pro and con to this because it says when controlling an objective. To control an objective, you can't be battle shocked. So if this unit is battle shocked, the unit will obviously lose this ability. It will lose the ability to have sustained hits too, if this is indeed what happens. So I think this is kind of a balance, to be honest. I don't think Guardians are very good at surviving. I don't think they're very good at holding objectives. I don't think they're going to become good at holding objectives. And I can easily see this being something that is used by Eldar players to move onto an objective, basically with a character or something like that, and be able to get more hits out of the unit. Do I think Guardians are going to become this fantastic unit because of this? Probably not. I think if this ability was switched out for something like defensive, like a 4+ invul save or something like that when on an objective, I think the unit would be much better. But to be honest with you, I just highly doubt that the Eldar Guardians will get this ability. I hope they do. I hope they get some sort of Guardian shield where they can use it when they're on an objective and stuff like that to get a 4+ invul save. I even think it would be fair if they made it so that if you were battle shocked, you lost the ability. But if they're just going to increase sustained hits 1, which I kind of suspect, based on what the datasheet looks like now and based on the trends that I've seen in the reveals so far, then they're still going to be kind of one of those mediocre units that, yeah, they're going to be decent depending on how they're priced, but they just might not be that great at holding objectives. And then, of course, they're going to reveal the Avatar of Kane. How could they not reveal the Avatar of Kane, right? That's what gets Eldar players excited. So, Avatar of Kane, I believe its stats are going to remain largely unchanged, except for its toughness, which I believe will go up to 12. Hecatan Land Fortress had toughness 8. Land Raiders originally had toughness 8 until they were improved to toughness 9. So I think we can safely kind of say that it's going to be around toughness 12. It might be toughness 11, to be honest, but I'm guessing toughness 12 on this guy. He's going to have the same amount of wounds, leadership 5+, of course, because, he was basically fearless before. I don't see him getting a really bad, leadership value at this point, and he's going to have a 2+ save. As for his weapon, the Wailing Doom, I think they're just basically going to nerf its AP. I think it's going to remain exactly the same for the most part. Piercing Strike, Strength 14, AP -4, Damage D6 +2, Attack 7. The Sweep is going to be Strength 8, AP -1, Damage 2, Attacks 14. I do think the Strength is going to increase a little bit on this to, again, like I said, compensate for the increase in toughness of infantry across the board. As far as its shooting, I think it's going to have a range 12 weapon. It's going to lose its beam ability, but it's going to retain its Strength 14. It's going to have AP -4 most likely, Damage D6 +2, and Attacks 1. However, it is going to have Sustained Hits D3 because I think all beams are going to get this ability where they get the Sustained Hits D3. And we actually saw this with the Leagues of Votann. I think it was a conversion beamer or something like that they had, but basically we saw this on there. Conversion beamers were a beam weapon, and I think all beam weapons are going to operate like this. They're going to get Sustained Hits 3 instead of the rule that they have now, where they draw a line between the unit and the unit they're targeting and basically hit everything in between. Which, honestly, I'm really not mad at. I think this works a lot better, even though you can't do the shenanigans with Avengers of Azurian and everything like that. I don't think that specific, ability is returning anyway. So Fuegan lovers out there, Biel-Tan lovers with that combo, with the Avengers of Azurian combo, I'm sorry, I think that's going to go away. Unfortunately, it was one of my favorite combos too, but I don't think we're going to see that. So basically losing the beam profile is not that big of a deal, and in fact, Sustained Hits D3 is much better, especially when you account for the fact that you can hit a vehicle multiple times with this. And guess what? Strands of Fate can give you that 6 to hit, so you can roll that or you can get that Strands of Fate dice, you can put it as a 6, and you can get basically on average 3 attacks with this thing against a heavy target, which is going to be pretty good, even though the range is, kind of poor. As far as its abilities, I think units within 6 inches are going to be able to reroll Battle Shock and Charge rolls. I don't think this is something that is going to go away. Before, you basically ignored combat attrition tests, which was useless because there's no more combat attrition. The only thing this could possibly be is Battle Shock. And of course, rerolling the charge rolls is something that we have had for a while with the Avatar of Kane, and I don't think this is going away either. Although I do think the aura range is going to be reduced to 6 inches for both abilities. I think the charge rolls was always 6, but the Battle Shock or combat attrition test was 12. So I think they're both going to reduce this to 6 inches. As far as its other special abilities, it's going to have a 4+ invul save, of course. It's going to probably half the damage dealt to it or have some similar ability which reduces damage. And it's going to have Deadly Demise D6. So overall, once again, I think the Avatar of Kane is going to be a pretty strong unit in the Eldar Codex once more. However, here's a quick disclaimer for you guys. Fortune is not going to be able to be probably used on units like the Avatar anymore. It's probably only going to be used on units that the Farseer joins directly. So even though we might still see Fortune in some way in the index, we're not going to be able to probably apply it to the Avatar of Kane, which is a huge damage decrease. A lot of you guys will be thinking the same thing, right? You can't target the Avatar of Kane with psychic powers anymore. Now, I think what this means is the Avatar of Kane is going to become less objectively good in highly competitive play. Even though its datasheet still looks strong, it's lost the ability to be targeted with things like Quicken to get to the battlefield or get to objectives quicker. It's lost Fortune to be more durable to enemy fire. And I think, in general, it's going to be a much less competitive choice because of that in highly competitive play. As for the other Avatar, the Incarn, I don't think the Incarn survives the 10th edition release without some kind of nerf. Now, I do think this nerf is going to be in the form of its weapon no longer being able to straight up ignore invul saves, but instead being changed to devastating wounds. That's a small nerf. It's not really that big of a deal. But I do also think it's going to get some sort of nerf to its movement ability. So basically being able to move somewhere after a unit is destroyed anywhere on the battlefield, I think that's going to be limited in some way. My thoughts on this are that it's probably going to be limited to once per round. So you can only do it once per either your opponent's turn or your turn. And yeah, I haven't confirmed this. Obviously, again, this is one of those tinfoil theories, but I do think there is some, credit to that being true in some form. Okay, so in conclusion, I'm really hoping that this is along the lines of what we see when the Craftworld Eldar are revealed for 10th edition. And I don't think I'm going too much out of the box here. I'm not really throwing out all these crazy special abilities. I'm really just focusing on what we've seen so far and what kind of goes along with our current codex. And as we've seen so far, dice manipulation and movement mechanics that are out of phase are still in the game. So I do believe that battle focus will remain in some form, and I think it is going to be the detachment special rule, to be honest with you. Khorne Berserkers kept their movement ability where they can move D6 towards an enemy unit when they're shot at. I don't see any reason why the Eldar wouldn't keep their after they shoot, they can move D6 mechanic. And I was kind of fearing that they would lose this really early on before some of the reveals, but after seeing the reveals, after seeing what they've given other units, I can safely kind of say that battle focus will probably be in there in some way, shape, or form. However, just take everything I've said in this video with a grain of salt, because these are just my predictions and may or may not be true. Again, I am using evidence from various reveals, from trends and things like that to make educated guesses on what we're going to see, but I can't be 100% sure that all of these things are going to be correct, right? And really, nor can any of us until we actually see the reveal. All right, everybody, that is going to be it for today. I will see you guys next time. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you to all my patrons who have supported the channel over the last months. Your help has been greatly appreciated. And for those of you who do want to support the channel, I'm going to leave my Patreon and PayPal links in the description for you guys. And it would be greatly appreciated if you did decide to support the channel. All right, everybody, that's going to be it for today. I will see you guys in the next video, and peace out.